Hey, folks. Thanks for joining the webinar today. We have Jason Viglione from Spotnana joining us today talking about the voice of customer, especially how it used in the support program. Jason is a veteran leader in the support area. He has worked in companies like Olympic, the US Air Force, and most recently he's at Spotnana has been using DevRev. And I've personally learned a lot from Jason. So it'll be great to share our joint learnings today, especially around the voice of customer program. So Jason, love to introduce you to the audience here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is exciting. As you mentioned, I've been doing this type of support work for decades, if you can believe it. And, in all different forms and facets, from, kind of on-site desktop support to these cloud distributed SaaS platforms. And, we've helped users of all kinds in all different ways and learned a lot on how to make sure that we're not just solving problems as asked, but providing value for them as customers along the way and really hearing them. And that's where voice of customer comes in. So I'm excited to take you through some of my learnings over the years and how we've applied that.
Awesome, Jason. Yeah, we have a good audience joining us from across the world. So what we'll do is we'll go through our Q&As and questions in the end, folks, and you can post them in the Q&A section, and then we'll go over and answer those.
All right, very good. So I'll jump
Jason,
in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
In terms of the support data, right? What's the biggest advantage of using support data for all the voice of customer, which people might get from other sources like customer success, sales team? What makes support data so special?
These 5 bullets all hover around the same thing, and it's that people come to us in a moment of frustration, mostly, right? And that frustration can be from a bug, it can be from a question, but you don't call support just to say everything worked great today, right? So it starts there. And what does that give us that other things don't? And the start of it's high volume, right? It's every little thing that people come to us with. And again, it can be questions, it can be bugs, but you have a constant supply, right? Support's job is to fix all these things and try to put yourself out of business by not having bugs and questions, knowing full well that you can't ever put yourself out of business because every ticket you close is one right behind it. So that volume is incredibly valuable to you. You're never searching to say, I wonder what people think. And it's real time versus cyclical, right? Real time, it happens, they click a button, they open it up with support as it's happening. There isn't this thing where they come back 2 days later and cooler heads prevail. And in most cases, that's what you want, but in support, you don't. You want them to come to you immediately because you want to capture what the third bullet says. It's unfiltered, it's unprompted. This is not, hey, in India, how do you feel about this? People by and large are non-confrontational. So when you ask them that, they don't want to tell you, how am I feeling? I feel like you suck. They don't want to say that, right? When they're put on the spot, they want to be polite. But with this, they can't book a flight in Spotnana. They couldn't get their picture approved at Olympic, right? Whatever it may be. So they come to you unfiltered. Here's how I'm feeling right now. And you would be surprised over the years, the almost 30 years, how many people have said, I hate this platform and I also hate you. And I'm just guilty by association. But it's, that's the unfiltered part of it. And the next part is that it captures interactions with a variety of stakeholders. And that's important because you're going to get an individual contributor up to a CEO. You're going to get economic buyers, daily users, champions, people who are almost always on your side, still get frustrated at certain points. People that have used it once, people that have used it 1,000 times. When you put that together, you can't look and say, oh, this is just an India who likes to tell me the things that are wrong, right? This is everybody. And from that, as we'll see later in this presentation, you really get a good sense of, is this a one-off? Or is this a repetitive thing, right? And what are the feelings that are associated with that? And the more people you have, the clearer that becomes. And then the final piece is, while we love those first 4 bullets, that recorded data from places like CS or implementation as they're launching and their excitement maybe varies along the way, it complements those existing lessons, right? They were really excited to use the product. They were really excited to jump into implementation. Then a week later, I got a whole bunch of tickets about things, right? From, why doesn't it do this? Why does it do this? And you can say, well, how did that excitement of what was to be turn into why is it this way? What in that phase shift from implementation to launch created these stressors for them, right? So it gives you a real opportunity to understand across the board, because just the angry stuff, just the frustrated stuff is not really enough.
Yeah, totally. And Jason, to your point, that emotion, that radical candor, the natural feedback, if you will, is what makes that support data so special, right? And ticket is the heart of that support data. So I would love to understand how you handle tickets. How do you handle these stressed emotions? And in the end, how do you make your customer feel that they are being listened and acted on?
So every ticket's going to follow this overarching life cycle, right? It's they feel a thing, they tell you about the thing, we talk to them about the thing, we fix the thing, and we let them know the thing is fixed, right? But each stage has its important points, right? So an initial failure creates customer stress, and that failure can be anywhere from the platform to their understanding of the platform. So then they come to you and they create this where they express their frustration. And you're going to get people that say, this didn't work. Can you take a look at it? No stress, get back to me. Then you're going to have people with the same problem that's like, why is this way? I need to know immediately. So what do you need to do first? Because it might be a 5-minute fix, but it might not. So this first reply, super critical. And anybody that's ever worked with or for me will understand that I hammer the first reply process really, really big, right? Really deeply, because there are a few things about that matter. And the first is, right, it de-escalates that stress. And how do we do that? An example that I like to give, and anybody that watches that's working is going to go, here he goes with this, because I say this thing a lot. And it's, you come to me with a question. Why is this way? And maybe I don't have the answer, so I got to go get it. And I tell you, it's going to be 5 minutes. This guy right here, he has it. I'm going to go talk to him, and I'll be right back. That leaves you with a feeling that I'm not just kind of shrugging and going, I don't know, I guess we'll figure it out. I'm on a path, a very definitive path. And if I come back in 10 minutes, it's okay. It's longer than Jason said, but I knew he was off hunting something down. Conversely, what if you asked me a question and I said nothing? I just got up and left the room. And I came back in even 30 seconds. Great, thanks for the answer, Jason. But who walks away mid-conversation? Nobody, right? It's a very strange experience. And the other part that's important with the first reply is you got to find the intersection of canned and bespoke responses. And it can't be all one and it can't be all the other. It can't be all canned responses, because anybody that's been on hold with a support team of any nature has heard that message of your call's really important to us. Please hold the line and somebody will be with you shortly. And if 3 or 4 times you feel anything but important, so you can't just deliver these copy paste. That's not personal. You also can't make somebody wait 30, 45 minutes for a paragraph of text that you may very well have gotten wrong, right? So what do? Right? It's a little bit canned with a little bit of context, a little bit of a bespoke nature that says, I want to get this out to you so you know we're here, but I want to add some context so you know I'm on the right track and not just spinning in circles hoping somebody helps me help you. So that's really important. That builds trust, it builds rapport, and also, it buys you time to go to the next step of solutioning. Because maybe the solution is we have to code a fix. Maybe the solution is we have to educate you. Or maybe it's both, right? Maybe it's here's a Band-Aid to stop the bleeding while we craft a surgical response for permanent fix, right? And it could be any number of things. So you get that out and they go, okay, Jason's got this. His team is on it. And then it buys me time to do the right work. And then you come back and you deliver it. And you tie a whole thing up where you go, when I first responded, I told you here how I was looking at this. Then I went out and did it. And either A, it matches, or B, we deviated a little bit, but you can explain the deviation because you have a flow, right? It can't be disjointed, right? It's got to go. You know what? Go back to that phone call and you explain it to somebody and they go, oh, we're not the right team. We're going to pass you off to the next team. Then when you get on the phone with the next team, what do they say? What brings you here today? All the things I told the last guy, but you didn't pass that over, right? So when you do this, you have a flow end to end where nobody feels passed around. Nobody feels like it's an inconvenience to come to me. And that's really important. Things break. Everything we own breaks at some point. That's not the problem. How does the owner of that device, the manufacturer of that item, handle it when it breaks? People make mistakes, but how do they recover? And that's what steps 3, 4, and 5 really deliver to the customer. You recover in a way that makes you feel sure that this is a things happen. This is not a, this company's broken, right? That's critical in the response.
Yeah, yeah. Now, once you have de-escalated the stress in these tickets, thought about the proper solutioning, how do you take all this high volume ticket data with a bunch of qualitative, quantitative information, and then distill it back to your product and engineering teams so that those things don't happen again?
You have to understand the root cause, right? We have to slice 2 different ways. We slice wide across the product and we slice deep within the customer. And what I mean is like this. So is it a lot of issues? Does one customer have a lot of issues, making it seem like the customer is the problem? When I say the customer is the problem, I don't mean they are the problem, but there's a problem with this customer. And it can be any one of these 3 things. And I'll come back in 1 second. Or is it an issue by type, where it's not this customer, but 50% of our customers walk into a dead end when they do this one thing, right? Do we have to solve it by documentation or feature improvements? So we're going wide across the product, across all customers in the product, or we're looking deep at this individual customer. When you look at the customer, it can be a few things, and this is far from a comprehensive list, let's be clear. But the adoption, do you have 1 person in the organization using it, or do you have 50 people in the organization using it, right? What does that mean? Because if it's low adoption, the issues can be caused by confusion, right? If it's not implemented properly, maybe not set up for success. Maybe we missed something in requirements gathering, right? Or maybe we just can't accommodate what they want, or maybe they weren't clear in it. So how is it implemented? And where are they in the journey? Are you going to have more problems 2 weeks or 2 years after launch, right? It takes time to build those, build those muscles, right? Of people how to understand where to click and where to click. We've all used a platform where we're trying to find something and I click, that's not it. I click, that's not it, right? I had this issue with an app on my phone just yesterday. Something was just not really where I thought it was going to be. But frankly, I don't use the app a whole lot, so I'm not familiar with the nav. So it could be just that. It's just new to them and they're just not ready for it. When we look at issues by type, are there common stumbling blocks? Do people have issues doing this one particular thing? And it could be any number of reasons. Maybe we didn't build it right in whatever organization. Maybe we did. Maybe it was perfect when we built it. But we've outgrown it. It's time to rethink this and say, how do we change this feature at the point of scale we are today? Could be misaligned expectations, right? There's a really famous example in a wonderful book called The Mom Test about building things. And one of their organizations brought up an example about how they wanted analytics. And the company spent months defining all these crazy tables and exports and all those things. And all the customer really wanted was a logo on top. So when they passed it to their customers, it was branded properly. But the question wasn't asked right. So the expectations were misaligned. And that company never delivered on what they were asked because, frankly, it just was unclear. Or it could be missing documentation, right? There is a level of self-serve. I'm happy to help anybody that comes to me with a question or a need. But let's face facts. They stumble into something. They stop what they're doing. They send in a ticket. It comes into the queue. We see it. We research it. We triage it. We get it back to them. If there was a doc with a couple of simple steps, it is actually faster for the customers. I don't pass them to knowledge bases to get me off the hook. I pass them to knowledge bases so they can very quickly jump in and understand maybe what they're doing. And even if they can't, you scroll to the bottom of almost any knowledge base. Was this helpful, yes or no? And if you say no, you can open a ticket a lot of times, right? And why is that? Because they come to us and I go, oh, you read the document. So now I know your starting point. I know that you tried A, B, and C, or you at least read about A, B, and C. So I'm not going to make you go back to the beginning. Nothing is frustrating by telling the customer, the old IT joke, turn it off and back on again, right? Because that's the simplest thing. And they've likely done that. Treating them like they don't know what they're doing is never the way to go back and build that rapport in that first response. So when it comes from documentation, okay, I know where you're at. If there's missing documentation, how can you expect anybody to be successful? Anything you buy comes with a book, or in 2024, a QR code to a piece of documentation. Set them up for success. Be there when it fails anyway. But if you don't do that, how can you expect anybody, right?
Yeah, totally makes sense. And this dissection of the customer on the left and the product on the right is what actually brings that feedback from the front office to the back office, saying that, hey, you know what? Your product has these gaps which need to be fixed so that the customers don't see them again.
And you brought up an interesting point earlier when you mentioned the Air Force, right? So part of my time in the Air Force, I taught. I taught communication fundamentals, routing and switching, and all these things about how technology and information moves. And we had classes of 12 students, and if I had 11 students that got all the same question wrong, and they all chose the same wrong answer, either I'm the most unlucky teacher on the planet, or I said something that led them all to that answer. And now I look at that and I go, it's not them, right? It's me. So now this is issues by type, right? That question is a bad question. So we need to remove that and educate them where that question now becomes a good question because they're prepared. And that's something that goes back to the back office, the technical writers, the instructional system design people, even some of the notes that we have in the instructor delivery as part of the presentation, right? That's a back office problem. One person gets questions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That person's not understanding the material. That's issues per customer, right? So it's a really good example of understanding where one person goes deeply incorrect, or everybody has the same piece that's not working for them.
Yeah, and it's so challenging for the back office to actually empathize with the customers because they are not on the front lines all the time. So how do you take all this feedback and bring a process so that they can actually action on this and the customer can feel that any feedback they give, somebody is listening and improving the product?
So again, not a comprehensive list, right? But here are some things to hit, right? These are some notes that you should really try to hit along the way. And the top one, right? You check in on the long tail customers, right? They're the ones that never get as much love. They're not North Star. They're not perfect segment, right? They have value and they deserve to have a working product. But there's a lot of value in that because they aren't handheld quite as much. So this is what somebody just goes through in a very native environment. I log in, I click around, I get stuck, and I don't have a CSM necessarily to hold my hand through this. So you think about these people, right? And what they go through, and you aggregate across that entire segment. All of the people who are self-serve and using the product, how do they feel about this? Because we can't always have somebody from like a value driver, an ROI, CSM perspective, ready to solve their problem. Trends are very informative too, right? If you have 1,000 users and 3 of them have the same issue, how much do you care about that, right? 3 out of 1,000 is not even a whole digit percent. Those are just 3 people that had an issue, right? Not that they don't deserve to be helped, but what is that telling you in terms of usage data? Very, very little. When you see things that's not like this and then a spike, but when you see drift, right? More and more people are getting into the same scenario, right? Repeatedly, we're seeing these things, or something that spikes and then is sustained. Is there a release at that spike? Did we do something and change something? So we need to understand the trends of how often is this happening? Who is running into this issue? Are these people that, going back to some earlier slides, maybe they just weren't formally educated? Maybe the customer brought on a whole new team post implementation and training. And now they are just wandering around somewhat aimlessly because they didn't benefit from that. Could be any one of those things. And that speaks directly into the user activity and knowledge piece, right? Like, what are they doing? Do they log in once a week and just do a very simple task, or are they deep into the product where they fully understand it? Are they power users? One thing that you can really do in step 3 is user personas, right? Who are your power users? Who are the ones that require hand holding in it? And we've done this before. I had power user Paul and hold my hand Hannah, right? And these were profiles of people. They say maybe hold my hand Hannah is less technical, right? And so she needs more things. She's a marketing person using a MarTech tool. And now all of a sudden, like the technology becomes the forefront of her job, but it never was before. So she requires ushering across the finish line through no fault of her own, right? This was foisted on her. She never asked for it, right? And power user Paul, you're not going to give him the turn it on and off again kind of thing, right? He's a power user. We can say, do me a favor, check the API call, right? So knowing these personas of people allows you to treat them appropriately and get them to a solution more quickly. And the last piece is this pre-QBR or renewal, like this snapshot of these things, right? Support tickets come in as they come in. QBRs, renewal conversations, are scheduled and somewhat contrived because we've determined what we're going to say, what we want to convince them of, right? That this is a great product. So if somebody goes in and say the last 3 months, your usage is through the roof, a lot of people logging in, all really amazing stuff, and now renewals coming up, so can we have money? But if they don't know that, yes, people are logging in, but they're logging out 3 minutes later because they're confused, it's really bold and somewhat obnoxious to ask for money at that point, right? So by feeding this to the CSMs, we can say the platform has lots of ROI. We know that, but maybe it doesn't have ROI to them because they feel like they're stuck very often. How do they then defeat those complaints? How do they convince them that this mass of tickets that may be open is not how we do business? It's just this point in our journey, and it's really easy during renewal to not think about the 12 months, but think about where we are in the last 1 month. It's that, post breakup, you remember all the awful things that got you to that point, but you forget how wonderful it was when you first met, right? This is a very similar relationship dynamic. So by using this, we can say, here are all the tickets you have open. Here are the tickets you've had open over the course of the year, and here's how they got solved for you. And you get to dilute those problems over a long enough timeline. And it's not to make them go away, but it's to make them balance fairly the issues against the successes. And if that's a net positive, the issues don't matter as much as you think. And that's the key component to delivering this across the board, whether it's sales, growth, renewals, CSMs, it could be anything. It can even be to AEs for future clients. Yeah. Right? At Olapec, we learned really quickly there's a certain type of customer that's likely not going to be successful with our tool. Yep. Right? Because of the support tickets of all of those like-minded customers, right? Here are the types that succeed. Here are the types that don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And like even the temperature of the customer, you don't have to wait a quarter. You can actually get it every day on the interactions you have on those tickets, right? So it's a
absolutely.
You have to be constantly engaged. You can't just wave your hands off. And so Jason, we'll come back to how Spotnana is using DevRev right now across the organization. Tell us more of how you have structured that team, the whole process, and how it's providing value to you.
So a little quick bit of backstory is that this support team and DevRev all kind of came to be at Spotnana at the same time, right? I joined the company that built the team, and we brought Spotnana on board at the exact same time. As a matter of fact, me and India met about a week before I actually officially started at Spotnana. So you can see that, right? We are DevRev Spotnana OGs together. So the point of that is that it became very, very important to put DevRev at the top of the funnel, because prior to this, you had CSMs and everybody else, spotters, as it were, at Spotnana, just asking for help in Slack, going right to engineers, opening up tickets with Jira from all different places, very chaotic. It was hard to get any of these trends and those things. So what we've done is this, right? And this is a really smooth, linear flow. So an issue is experienced on the left there. Somebody has any one of the types of issues we've described so far. How do they get to us? Well, we have 5 ways that they can get to us at any given moment, because I want them to be comfortable raising tickets to me where they're already comfortable, right? So for a customer, that might be email, right? You just send an email to me. You're in your email all day long. So you email techsupport@spotnana.com, and I get a ticket on that. Some of the people that work more closely with me, like some of the enterprise CSMs, for example, they're in DevRev a lot, not because they're solving tickets, but they're using it to glean that information about their customers. There's a little plus button, right, inside of DevRev where you can click it, make a manual ticket. You're there anyway. Why would I say you're in DevRev that does tickets, leave DevRev, go to email and email it in? I'm adding steps to people who are already feeling friction. Internal chat and messaging platforms, whether it's Slack or Teams or whatever you guys choose to use in your organizations, right? We have the DevRev plugin. So you can go to one of our channels about air shopping, right? Buying flights, and express something where you're stuck. You click a button, click another one, create a DevRev, and it comes right here. Once again, if you're somebody who's in Slack, especially in a very Slack forward company or a Teams forward company, right? You're already there. Leaving there to go somewhere else just to get to a third place is really nonsensical for people that are frustrated. So you can come to us that way. Cross-functional stakeholders using alternative ticketing systems. So we have a Freshdesk instance used by a cross-functional partner. Again, am I going to make them who are in Freshdesk all day long leave, go someplace else? You're there. So we have a mechanism to push tickets from Freshdesk right into DevRev. And then bug capture platforms. These are the marker.ios of the world, like all of those types, right, that are implemented into your platform. So you have an issue, you click a button, it pops up. You can mark it up by drawing arrows and putting text in to explain what's going on. And you click that button, and then it comes over and it brings all kinds of great contextual information, the company, the user, the experience. We've got it pulling in logs and debug links for ourselves that are really helpful. So now I can start my triage right away. So the point is that I put inroads to me from wherever they are. I don't want the customer to guess. I have a bug, I call Jason. I need a feature, I call in India. I don't want that for people. You have a problem, just come to me. I will route it internally. That's my job. Customer, it's not yours to figure out who's going to help you. So all of these things aggregate to a ticket created for a first triage and debug. And from there, we can see what we need to do. It splits back out because not all tickets are created equal, right? There's different types. So let's pause on the flow to really quickly talk about these: operational, project management, and value added support. So operational support is somebody says, oh, I wish this submit button was on the left instead of the right, for whatever reason, right? I don't get to decide if we're going to change the product in that way. I'm not going to code that. That's not for me. It may not even be done. So I'm just going to operationalize their request from a, this would be cool, to a customer reports that by moving the button, it improves their flow, right? It's this customer, here's their level of importance to us, right? Here's all of the things you need to know. Now, product team, you decide if we're going to do it, when you were going to do it, how we're going to do it, etc. I'm not doing anything but operationalizing a, could we do this, into something that the product team can consider reasonably. That's why it goes over to the product team. Project management support is similar, but not same, right? That's a bug, right? This isn't working properly. Again, most technical support teams are not coding anything, right? But what are they doing? They're also not just sending it over to engineering and go, hey, fix it. Let me know when it's done. Because I need to be able to relay this to the customer with confidence. So we're like project managers. Customer said this is what they were trying to do. Expected result, actual result, right? Here's the path that they took. I was able to replicate it. I found out they weren't doing anything goofy like using a pop-up blocker. And that's why the modal wasn't showing up, right? I've confirmed that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. I send it over to them. They send a fix back. I check it out. This meets the customer's needs. They finalize it in QA, send it to me. And now I get to position this to the customer as, here's what we did. Here's why we did it. Here's how it works. Screenshots, videos proving that it works. Make sure it works for you. And then we'll close this out. So I'm in the middle, again, not doing the coding, but right, liaising between these isolated engineers and the customers, right? The hub and spoke of support where it all comes into us and we farm it back out and we stay there for them, right? It's in the middle of them because we have to make sure that it's better, right? Engineers don't always get the business context. So that becomes really important to play that role in between. And then the value added support is it comes to us and it stays with us. Right? I uploaded a bunch of stuff and the upload didn't go through properly. So we open it up and go, oh, look, line 3 of the CSV, node 14 of the XML file. Here's where you went wrong. Repair that. They do it. We can test it or they can test it or whatever. but I don't need other people in this, right? We are just adding value by designing and creating the solution or informing the customer on how they have to. Q&A is value add support, right? Why can't I do this thing? That's not supported yet. Here's the workaround. Here's the timeline for it. Thanks, Jason. I don't need engineers to tell me how things already work, right? So those are those three things, right? And you can see it goes different places for each of those. And by having this split set of like swim lanes or methodologies, it really allows us to make sure that we're not going to engineering for everything. Hey, fix it, right? And we can provide value. Value-added support is the quickest because it doesn't go anyplace else. I don't have to alert an engineer who's breaking sprint and context switching because I can just deliver the value myself as a team. Right, so that's the fastest, and that deepens that relationship. I came to Jason. Jason came back with an answer. We were done, right? If every single time they came to me, I had to loop somebody else in, they go, well, you guys are like switchboard operators, right? That take calls, pass it up, but you don't do. That's important. But of course, all three of these come back to the customer at the end of the day, right? Where we can say, product team said they're investigating this, looks like a Q2 release, right? Solved with engineering, right? They delivered the response. I tested it. It works. You test it. Verify that it works. Or here's the answer nobody else needed. It just works, right? At the end of the day, it all goes back to them. There's no point where support goes, somebody else is going to work on this for you, right? Thanks. That's not the way we ever behave. So we can split it back out to follow the right channels, the right paths, the right timing, the right escalation, but then it does come back through support and loops to the customer. And as far as the customer is concerned, we are it, right? They come to us and everything behind us is whatever it is in the company. We're like a purposeful abstraction layer that isolates the rest of the company from them. So at the end of the day, we're solving their problems with or without assistance. And it provides a much smoother flow. Come in however you want to come in. We'll take it to the right place and we'll come back to you. So you'll notice, right? They come in places. Support team takes over here. We split out to other people and then support team takes over here. So the place where we're checking and delivering all starts and ends with us. And anything in here, transparent to the customer. And that's the way it should be. They don't need to know who's doing it. You take your car into the shop. Do you know the name of the mechanic fixing it? Do you care? No, right? You go to the front desk, you give them the keys. At the end of the day, you get the keys back and the car works. And whoever did this in between, unimportant to you. You get what you need. And that's exactly how we see it.
Yeah. And that's like the goal of DevRev is to bring like customers closer to the people who do the work, but without all these silos and all the information overload they have to do on how that problem is solved. So the goal was to just abstract all of it and give them a single platform where they can get any request solved.
And that's really it, right? People have enough to think about. You know, one thing that I tell all my teams always is stuff like this, where they say, you know, a customer emailed me at 9:30 and said, this was an emergency. And I got back to them at 10 o'clock and then I haven't heard from them for 8 hours. It was such an emergency. Where were they? And you got to remember, in this world, all we think about all day long is Spotnana, right? And Olympic. All we thought all day long was about Olympic. But that's not how people work, right? From 9 to 9:30, this travel arranger manages all of her bookings for her team. And at 10 o'clock or 9:30, she moves on to something else. And you can't ask her to context switch back over to this. Spotnana is not her whole world. It's our whole world, right? Yeah. So, you know, that goes exactly to your point. So it's really important to make sure that you're understanding that customers don't live and breathe your platform. So you can't hold them accountable for when they're not as responsive. It's our job to be responsive, and we wait for them. We are on their timelines. It's their usage.
Yeah. Yeah, great discussion, Jason. I'll open it up to the audience here. We have Aditi, Alpesh, Joe, Manish, and Ranganath joining us from different parts of the world. If you guys have any questions, please post on the Q&A section. And Jason and I will love to answer those. And meanwhile, Jason, I had a question for you around AI. So there's a lot of buzz around how AI would change support. What are your thoughts on how you're planning to leverage AI to improve your customer support process and
You know, naturally, I'm a little bit cautious about AI as somebody who's been delivering human responses to people for many, many years. There's a point where, AI is trained well enough to do, right, what we do as humans. It speeds things up, right? There's some of that low hanging fruit. I think the first iteration of AI in support is pulling in information from established resources like knowledge bases, right? Like articles. So there might be some simple things, right? How do I exchange a flight? That might be a simple thing with a couple of clicks, right? And it might be for this type of flight, you do it this way, and the other type of flight, you do it another way. And we can use AI just to pull that in and deliver to them. And then when they say, I tried that, it didn't work, then okay, we can dig deeper. But why do we need to dig into it right from scratch if it's easily solvable? I think there are also ways to ask for more information with AI, right? Here are the things I need to know. And if that's not provided, AI can very quickly go back and say, oh, we have these 5 things we need answered. You've only answered 4. Please reply with this last thing. Why should a human stop what they're doing just to say, I don't have enough information? AI can supplement that. So there are a lot of ways that I think AI in concert with humans can help add context, maybe rewrite things. I think things like translations and the voice of the company, right, is also important, right? I want my responses to sound like me. I want your responses to sound like you to customers. But I don't want it to be so different that they feel like every single time they come to us, they get a different experience, right? It should be one experience, but still unique voices of people. And I think AI can help pull in some of that initial stuff that you supplement with your flavor, your personality.
Yeah, makes sense. So Alpesh had a follow-up question. He's asking around, have you used any DevRev AI features to help your customers?
Yeah, and we've only just started, and this is because, in a startup, right, there's a lot of things that are in flight and we're building and we're growing, but we have started to pull in some of our knowledge base articles and use DevRev's AI. We are not pushing those answers out the door 100%, but we are taking those to then massage just a little bit. And that's just really a function of the state of our own articles combined with AI being new, combined with my team being new. And we're just not really ready to go hands off just yet. Through no fault of anybody's. It's just part of our growth plan.
Okay, yeah. I think that's where a lot of value will start coming in when you have self-serve features where you won't even need support to answer some of those basic questions. The customers can auto-discover those, yeah.
And I just don't think we've defined those boundaries just yet. So we can't effectively use it until we know where AI begins and ends and what topics and things like that. So
makes sense, yeah. So Aditi had a question around, you mentioned the importance of treating power users and people who need hand-holding differently.
Yeah.
How do you quickly identify what kind of a user that person is in a ticket or a question?
Well, when you add the word quickly, the answer is you don't, right? These are learning personalities. You can take learnings from other users. A lot of times the role of the user will tell you things. So you've got some JavaScript widget that goes on their homepage to provide, right? And the guy or girl that's doing that work, right? Very clear. They're an implementation person, right? So they're going to have technical knowledge. So you can get a little bit deeper. So, things like Salesforce, for example, that have roles, it gives you some indicators. So I think it's a combination of what their role is, how they're labeled in like your CRM system, for example, and the content of the question that gives you a clue. What we often do is we spend time ahead of time with a lot of the core users, and we try to bucket them so then we can give them the right kind of help. But a question may come before you've got that segmentation done, and you don't have personas assigned, and then you have to use your judgment and the indicators.
Awesome. Rangnath had a question around, have you tried using pre-existing templates for configuring the setup, or did you craft them as you were configuring them?
I guess I'm not really sure. What kind of templates are we talking about? Are we talking about like response templates, or I'm not really sure. Like templates for configs within DevRev or responses to customers. I guess that really depends. I can answer it both ways, I suppose. We We built DevRev inside of Spotnana from scratch because Spotnana is a startup that's growing, and this was our first ticketing system here. So there was a lot, we didn't know what we didn't know, I guess is the short answer. So we built it custom and bespoke because we were doing a lot of learnings about the team as we went. And we lost in India along the way. And when it comes to response templates, that goes back to what I was saying about building trust. We're starting now to look at templating responses that purposefully leave gaps in the responses. So there's some level of contextually customized, bespoke wording on a per customer and per ticket basis. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, sorry, I got disconnected. I think we are almost at time. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and thank you, Jason, for such an insightful session. And
you're more than welcome.
And any questions, please shoot out to us. We can happy to answer offline as well. And Jason will share the slides with us, which we'll distribute.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I hope you guys found value in this, and I'm always happy to connect with anybody and talk more about it.
But have a good night, good evening, and good afternoon, everybody.
Take care, everybody.